Thank you, and good afternoon to everyone. Slow response. Good afternoon again. Well, my name is Maoko Kotani, and I've been asked to serve as the MC today. Here, we have two iconic business leaders of Japan seated here, right in front of myself. I mean, the picture I see. I mean, it was a huge news even if we send out this picture to the world. I'd like to ask you to speak your mind and your heart, honestly, because I would never have imagined that a day would come like this. I mean, 20 years ago, did you think about this? When you were pushing for the Gazoo and you turned the offer down. Now, 20 years hence, you have this scene together. Where do you imagine this? Well,
20 years ago, as I said, because of my youthful enthusiasm, in front of the famous Mr. Son, I had to decline his proposal. So even if it's after 20 years, and even if younger generation is taking lead in seeking this sort of collaboration, I wasn't quite sure he would be willing to accept this. However, his response was totally unchanged from 20 years ago. Mr. Son is the same, with big smiles on his face, and he was always gentle receiving me. I saw that smile on his face 20 years ago, but my side was not really ready and prepared vis-a-vis what he was able to offer.
Mr. Son, did you hate him because you were offering a good idea?
It was not unexpected, but I was disappointed. No, again, this is no. So, but back then, it was a big company, Toyota, and we were just beginning a small company, SoftBank. So it was like a big giant rock in front of us, and we are just looking up for that. But I do remember very clearly about them. Somehow, it was not really no, but it was not a bad feeling at all. Somehow, sometime later, I thought that we may have some encounter once again.
This initiative started with the young people, young engineers. And did you not think it's going to be successful?
I thought, is it serious? Is it true? That's how I thought.
And did you think of what happened 20 years ago?
That's why that I thought that it's really true. That's how I thought. So I said I'm going to pay a visit to you. And I asked my secretary to arrange that. But actually that Mr. Toyota is coming for the business trip to Tokyo anyway, so that he'll be able to drop by. And I said, really? Is that true? I thought about it twice, actually. I asked myself twice.
Earlier,
you talked about Mr. Keiichiro inducted to Automotive Hall of Fame in the United States. Looking back, President Akio is the fourth generation. The first generation was Sakichi.
The second generation, Mr. Keiichiro, was the founder of the automotive business. So you have two big founders within your family. And your father, Mr. Shoichiro Toyota, made this company so very large. Now you succeeded. But in a successor position, you always say it's a difficult position, actually. Mr. Son is a founder. How do you view him?
He was a person, he really started his business from the scratch, so he was a true founder. I have many founders in my relatives. I am not a founder of any business, so in that sense, founder, what one looks at, what are the problems racking their brains and what are they aspiring to achieve. But, bootstrapping and starting from the scratch is something that I always look up to Mr. Son and praise him so much, this strong guts that can be found in this foundation from the scratch and never be bested. I'm just an athlete, so that aspect may be something that I find common and I share or that resonates with. So 20 years ago, positions were different, both sides. But once at least once in my life, I wanted to face the founder, true founder. And by being faced with the living founder, probably I'll be able to bring myself closer to Sakichi or Kiichiro. Probably I'll be able to get some clue in doing so.
Now, Mr. So, Mr. Akio is a fourth generation, well, third generation as far as car is concerned, but he leads the company with the biggest cap in Japan. Well, your Somsan's company is number 2. You are number 1 and number 2. So there must be huge pressure. Now, what do you think of Mr. Akio?
He's a great person, I think. Founder, it's the one position, of course, but actually successing the business is even more difficult from my understanding, as a matter of fact, because if you can do it good, then that's natural, and if you cannot do good, then that you are the making the business bad. So it's really difficult, and actually they're already number 1 in the world, and next to number 1 is always has to be number 1. So you have to keep number 1 all the time. So that's maintenance or keeping number 1. In a marathon that you have to leading all the games, that's a big challenge, I believe. And also you have a lot of responsibilities for that, and I believe a big burden. So that's I believe that that's very difficult. So that's something that I really admire. And looking at Mr. Toyoda, he is like a founder. I believe that he's challenging new things one after another, and at the same time, once company is not always a good time. Actually, there's a good times and bad times, and I believe I remember a lot. But there are a difficult time for Toyota as well. But once again, that he bring the business back once again on the track, and I believe that he has a founder spirit in himself.
So, the two of you, why do you think you are together here on this stage? I mean, I have to wonder, going back to the original point, why Toyota and SoftBank, the two companies, why?
I think it's a time. We just see the time now. Of course, we respect them, we admire them. It's a great company, the Toyota is. And as Mr. Toyota mentioned by himself earlier, that it's not the production company, but now transforming to the mobility company. And he recently made such an announcement. And now that developing the new chapter, new world, and on the way to the new direction, we, from the PC era, entering into internet era, and now it's the mobile smartphones. And my mobile communication company is making investment in lots of car companies. First, we made before Uber, actually the Didi, that we had an announcement on the investment in such company, and many people ask us why. It's totally different industry. That's what many people ask me. But as you saw the chart from my presentation, mobility, AI service companies under our family members. And when it goes to the mobility, I believe that the time actually connected us up to.
Well, we are in the automotive industry. And the automotive industry, as I often say, is faced with the sweeping once-in-a-century change. And as represented by CASE, we are faced with that huge change. But in that environment, any time, I want to make sure that cars can always be treated with a strong bond of love. And so in this time of a huge transformation, we are going to squarely face up to that. And the typical example of that change would be reflected by autonomous driving. But in order to achieve autonomous driving and establish that technology, as Mr. Son mentioned earlier, we have to realize that every year 1.25 million people are losing their lives. And that represents the reality of mobility, which is considered to be very convenient. And I want to reduce the traffic accident fatalities down to zero. And this is the aspiration shared not just by automotive industry, but I think also Mr. Son's industry as well. And finding him sharing this vision makes me very happy. Right now, vehicles are driven by drivers, but in order to introduce autonomy to that, and with the objective of reducing traffic accident fatalities down to zero, when we consider that, in the present world, how much data we can collect will become extremely important in that context. So in that context, the Mars operator, the provider, we do see many cars operated. And earlier in the presentation, it was mentioned that very rapid growth is taking place. You'll be underestimating what it can do, simply thinking it as an application on the smartphone. So we must find new seeds for creating mobility services day in, day out through those data collected. In the past 80 years, our predecessors worked very hard producing many cars, selling many cars, and our cars are driven all over the world. And our history is also studied with failures and mistakes. So this history of mistakes and also the UIO that we have together, combining these two, and when we aim to introduce autonomous driving technology, can all that be achieved by car makers alone? And also companies that we are going to work in the autonomous technology. Opening the door, we realized that Mr. Son was sitting in right behind that door, and that really indicates that time is now, because we share the vision exactly. Today, coming to this stage, and the executive vice president of both companies making presentations. I don't know whether they somehow coordinated what they were going to say in their presentations. I wasn't informed of those presentations, but I realized that those presentations made by those four individuals were well meshed with each other and combined each other. I didn't feel that those were presentations given by people coming from different companies. We are trying to bring the current world into a new field. And we rediscover the fact that we are seeking the same thing, and this represents the mandate of the times. This is the calling coming from the times, and that's why we sit together.
You talked about the Uber, Grab, the well-known names. And I mean, you have been involved with these operations already, so the two companies catching up with the time. Do you think it's only a natural matter? Of course, it's been expected that that your two firms will now make this encounter. Has this been all expected?
And also, we are good at different fields. For example, in our case, we work in the real world, manufacturing cars and driving those cars. That's what we do. But the provision of platform, developing that platform, to get information, and also by making investment in those other areas. So we are good at different worlds, but sharing the same vision. Once these two companies decide to join together, what is going to happen? And that really makes me very excited, and that really made me willing and anxious to work together.
Mr. Son earlier said this is the first step. There will be second and third steps.
In my head, I just made it myself, and we want to make it that way, right? Of course. Each of our clusters, there is always a connected points, and that is making more.
Well, then, for example, SoftBank, there's a funding business as well. And so as a Grab and Uber is concerned, you are an investor. You invested in these companies to grow their businesses. Now, this time, this arrangement between SoftBank and Toyota, creating this new company, is more or less a real business. So it's different from just the funding of new companies. But going forward, will be funding aspect to this business as well?
The Toyota's culture may be somewhat different when it comes to that particular aspect. In relation to the second pillar, I talked about the partnership or alliance amongst OEMs. But just joining hands through equity participation and grow the volume is not what we aimed at in creating those friendship or partnership. We were always after building ever better cars, and so long as we can find our partners equally interested in building better cars, we'll just go, why don't you come and join with us? So that's how we are going to expand this group of friends and allies. And that, I think, is more quintessentially Toyota-like. However, of course, I do realize that there is the world of finance and capital investment, so probably I can leave it to Mr. Son.
Toyota does have already the great capabilities of manufacturing and also selling those. Our cluster number one strategy, on the other hand, is to find the lots of entrepreneurs, founders, and we support them. That's our position. That's how we call it cluster of number one strategy. So Toyota leading the developing the technologies, manufacturing the car, and the family companies create the AI technologies and so on, and us to combine those two companies, connecting those companies so that we can share the advantage of each other. That's I believe, the way that we will be looking at. So for example, Uber, recently Toyota have announced the investment in, also in Grab as well. And like Mr. Toyoda mentioned earlier, that's not the only capital relationship, but actually join the boat to create and develop the new technology. That's the passion that Mr. Toyoda has. And to develop such technology, from our understanding, that can be Uber, that can be Grab, and also more in the air companies going forward. And we would like to support such leading companies, capitals, clusters. That's the way that we can support them. And I am the founder, and also they are also the founder of the venture companies. They are young and very energetic, so that we kind of have a good and safe common chemistry in between, so that we smell the same kind of chemistries, right?
So you're a venture capitalist, helping develop the ventures?
And also they are so energetic, and they have so motivated to do the new things. In other words, like Jack Ma in Alibaba, so he's a leading CEO and create the things. So those creator and also the creator of Toyota, that we try to connect each other so that we'll be able to provide the opportunity of such a connection.
I see. Over 10 years ago, I visited Mr. Son in my program, and there. And the interview is over now. Yes, thank you. And then he introduced me to another person, and he was a Chinese, without able to speak Japanese. And who was his name? And Mr. Son said, Jack Ma. But I thought nobody would recognize him in Japan, even if his face appeared on Japanese program. But Mr. Son said he's a big figure, certainly in the future. And now, of course, he's a huge icon, a figure. Go to Davos, it's all full house, and cannot even interview him these days. He's listed on NYC already, and Mr. Son has contributed to that success in a great deal. So your cluster strategy, Mr. Son, you have the discerning eye to help develop venture capitalists. A company which will stay for 300 years, you will choose and help them develop. But in the meantime, Toyota's idea of the group strategy is to collect the peers from the real world, so to speak. And sometimes with the equity investment, but not as a venture capitalist. But from different perspective, you form a sort of all-Japan coalition. Uber, of course, is not a Japanese, but it's a different.
Company must grow sustainably and enduringly, and that's what many stakeholders are requesting from corporations. The founding stage is demonstrated by Mr. Son. That is to say, many venture capitalists and capitalists need to support those. Otherwise, the startup companies will not be able to grow. And once the startup grows into a certain level, together with the real world, they must aspire to make a better world based upon continuous improvement, and therefore there need to be connection, co-work between real-world operators and also the venture capitalists, and then further making investments in other segments. So that cycle is going to be repeated in different stages. The strength of a Toyota Group, with the fact that we have this real capability that is used in the real world. And from startup ventures of various founders or entrepreneurs, some companies do select Toyota as their partners. The new up-and-coming companies, the industry that had not existed before but newly created, we have this history of 80 years. Even in the case of those startup companies, the company with the history of 80 years could be interested in those new ones. And whenever new things are attempted, we want to be the company that those new startup companies want to invite in.
Mr. Akio said, we are living at the time of changes in 100 years. So it's a death of alive sort of situation. So you have to be very nimble to be able to change your direction, whatever happens. You have to be very mobile in that respect. And you have to make a lot of new investments. In that sense, AI. Do you think that's an area where you should put your resources together to form that industry, while you should keep your nimbleness to be able to make any required change in direction?
So there is a big wave coming, I believe. So at the time of the internet, there was a big wave as well. In the past 20 years, there was a big wave coming on. So top 10 companies of market cap in the world, about out of 10, 7 are internet-related business. In 10 years ago, just one internet company, only Microsoft. And I'm not sure that the Microsoft is an internet company or not. That's a different question. But we regard it as an internet company for now, and that was only one company out of 10. And when it comes to AI service, AI technologies, those companies who focus on such is not there on the list. Google, Amazon, they are working on it, but it's not the company only for focusing on AI. But for those companies only focusing on AI will be actually taking the lead on the world's movements in coming 10 years and 20 years. So we will see such an era comes. So the same wave as we saw at the internet era, there will be a big wave of AI is coming now. So there we are focusing on so that we can move together with such wave.
The time is now upon us, I believe. And when that happens, I'm very happy that we are chosen to be a partner.
I think it's a great opportunity. The world king, Toyota, is now open-minded to work together and challenge the new things. Actually, we are so honored to be also be a partner. That's really great.
You have a history, and large companies usually have a baggage. And take that for granted on the pedestal, so to speak. And sort of businessman, salaryman, have to make success while he is in the office. But in your case, your company was created your grandfather, and even in the age of AI, you have to keep the company at the head.
It's a founder family. That's also the different story, I think. So that's a great thing, and I admire it.
But even in the case of a founding family, as you mentioned earlier, in the case of third generation, everything successful is taken for granted, and if it mistakes, it is blamed. The third generation is blamed for the fact, and that's what I have always been told.
So you've just given us shared us a history, and in the age of AI, you'll be in the top 10, and you're preparing for that now. So it's a milestone moment we are observing today in history. Now look at the future mobility society. What awaits us? Can you tell us? What's your vision of mobility society?
Well, I often ask the same question from many people, and I had a meeting with Mr. Warren Buffett, the investor, and he asked exactly the same question. And my immediate response was, well, future defies me, so I don't know what the future brings to us. I can't foresee what the future is going to bring to us. But I would like to insist on, and always feel strongly about, is only one. Amongst many industrial goods, I would always like to make sure that vehicles are treated with love and with strong bond. No matter how much AI is in the vehicle, how autonomous the car becomes, and how electrified the car becomes, I don't want to have cars relegated to the commodity, the just vehicle. I always want the car to be loved by people with strong bond, and that's one point I feel very strongly about and I want to insist on. So in the case of SoftBank Vision, that's where the mobility AI that is so much focused by SoftBank. So right now, I don't have any concrete idea that what the future will bring to us in the future, but as I said, we share the vision, so that makes me feel extremely excited and motivated. And this is, he said, this is a starting point for us. So this is just the announcement of the establishment of a joint venture today, but going forward, we would like to make sure that this makes further advance and progress and achieve evolution. And furthermore, we want to create smiles on many people with the mobility service that this new company offers to them, and would like to achieve even further growth and development to spawn something totally new. And I intend to do my best to achieve that. So I hope you'll be able to support us and cheer for us for the future endeavors. And please work hard to that shared vision on both of us. I would appreciate that very much.
Reading the future, predicting the future is, of course, very different. But Mr. Son is capable of that. But I remember he was distributing ISDN. I had no idea how to use that. But after a while, ADSL came along. Then it was followed by Steve Jobs. And iPhone was yet announced. But somebody like that came, and Steve Jobs he said that I'm going to do something about this, and he did something about it indeed. So what is invisible? Ability to see that something that is yet unseen.
So Mr. Toyoda said that he is too humble and say he doesn't know, but he has already announced the e-palette, and also you saw the lots of video earlier, so that he has already have a good pictures in his mind, and also collaborating with us and do something. It's because he has a good picture for the future already. So that's why I believe that we have such a great opportunity here. Automotives, mobilities, any difference from the past is that I believe it's going to be the cluster of semiconductors. So far that the screws, bolts, nuts, so that and the oils and everything, so that's the kind of a history. Going forward, recently I actually met with Mr. J.D., had a dinner of Samsung founder and talking about the Samsung's future. And they are going to focus on mobility. So he was so energetic to speak about it that Mr. J.D. said. And Masa, he said, you are investing in Uber, Didi, and so on. So why don't you also partner with us, so that he kind of talk about that. So far, Samsung's semiconductor shipments partner was always the smartphone companies, smartphone vendors. So those are the biggest clients, and they are taking about 30% share. And also for the automobiles, or less than 1%. But going forward, coming 10 years, 20 years, autonomous driving comes and everything, then mobility or the semiconductor for the cars, they are expecting 40% out of total shipments is going to be going to the automobile industry. So they are expecting the shipment is going to be larger than the shipments to the smartphones. So that's why that I believe that the car is going to be the cluster or the block of the semiconductors. So semiconductor, not only the chip mounted in the car, but actually there will be a chip in the cloud side as well. It's going to be communicating over the air, so that is going to be super intelligence AI that the human who could not avoid the troubles or the predicting the movement, so that super intelligence will be able to prevent in advance of such troubles. If we can do such a things, then that the human don't have to be rushed to put the brake or anything like that. But still, that will make human errors and accident. But actually, the super intelligence is gonna bring you even more accurate, more quick response to prevent any troubles, so that the AI as a super intelligence will be supporting such activities and behaviors, and even the traffic jams. Even with the same number of cars on the road, but traffic jam can be reduced going forward. That's the mobility society we are looking at. So AI is going to be able to allow us to do that going forward. And extension of the internet, there will be AI, and everything starts from the chip of the microprocessors and becomes PCs, smartphone, everything connected over the internet, and now that connected to the AI. So it's the extension of semiconductor revolution, so that we've been working on that road. And now that from the automobiles industries, now that our path is crossing finally, so the time has come actually to connecting SoftBank and Toyota right now.
Toyoda-san, I observe you every day, and you are a strong producer with your sensitivities. You said you couldn't tell the future, talking to Mr. Bassett, but you had a feel about the future.
I think he's too humble.
But as Mr. Son had just mentioned, that made the future much clearer, I believe.
Today, I was listening to Mr. Toyota's presentation earlier. Actually, I don't have much opportunity to see other people's presentation, and hearing, and not much opportunity to actually moved by other people's presentation. Actually, Steve Jobs' presentation was very much touched and moved, but today I was so impressed by your presentation, Mr. Toyota. It was great presentation, so very well done. And story was clear and logical, also passionate, and he is speaking from his heart. That makes people attracted, I believe. So it was a very good lesson for me too, so thank you. So it was a great job.
And I guess all your people want you to understand what you have in your heart. That's
I felt that too. So I think that he is also speaking his mind. So it was a very good chance to see his presentation today. So it was a good lesson for me.
I hope there will be a lot of learning opportunities, second and third stages. And unfortunately, our time is almost up. In the world, we're seeing a lot of news flying around. And I'm sure this event is seen by a lot of people. I am personally very honored and grateful for having this opportunity today. But I have to conclude because of time. But, this two-shot or couple shoot, are you okay with the pictures? Well, then thank you to the audience as well. And thank you very much. It's been my honor. Thank you very much, Mr. Son, Mr. Toyoda, and Ms. Kotani. The audience give them once again a round of applause. Thank you.